Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hockey Writers Ice Time, where we dive into some of the big ideas around the NHL. I'm Mike Fink, and I've got, once again, two guests we got this week, and we're also live on YouTube, or we're going to be putting this also up on YouTube, so you see a video version of us. I'm joined by Jacob Billington and Matthew Zator, two regulars here on these videos, the roundtables, the quick fires, the prospect series, all that stuff. So I'll start with you, Matthew. Matthew, how are you doing as the season comes to a close?
I'm doing good. It's been a crazy season for a lot of reasons, as we're going to talk about the first thing. But yeah, lots of fun stuff happening this season. Unfortunately, the Vancouver Canucks probably won't be. Well, they won't be in the playoffs this season. But I mean, overall, it's been a good season of hockey for a lot of different teams.
Yeah, I should have noted you cover the Canucks here, and the jersey in the background is a little bit of a giveaway of which team you root for. And Jacob, I know there's no jersey in the background for you, but you do root for one team that might be getting close to the playoffs. We're not going to say they're in until they are. But Jacob, how are you doing? Just games left in the season, and the team you root for has been doing pretty good so far. So, how are things?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, one point in the in, just based on how the math is working. So yeah, the Ottawa Senators are going to make the playoffs this year. Elliot Friedman broke that news back in September during the preseason. Of course, that's all over Twitter right now, is with him holding the Senators playoff sign. So yeah, no surprise that he's breaking that news too. But no, it's good. It's weird that we're headed into playoff season, and I'm going to be covering a team that's in it, and Matthew's not. Yeah. That's not the way I expected this season to go, but yeah. I didn't expect you to be either, to be honest, Mike. But yeah.
Well, yeah, covering playoff hockey. I mean, you're going to cover it this season, and it's going to be exciting. It's always exciting. It's always one of those things where catch up on your sleep now, because once this playoffs start, you're going full steam ahead, and it's going to be exciting. As a podcast, we're going to be covering a lot of it as well. We're going to get into that. I cover the Islanders. They're probably also not making it, but we're not going to discuss them. But we are going to discuss the Islanders because they played on Sunday and they allowed a pretty important goal. Alexander Ovechkin scored the record-breaking goal against the Islanders from that face-off dot on the power play. Wasn't that classic slap shot, but it was. But still an iconic goal that we're going to see on highlight reels. And we've talked about it, but every show's talked about it. Everyone's kind of talked about this record that's being broken and something that we didn't think would happen and what's impressive about it. One of the things I think about that I think I'll add to this is that what makes this impressive that Ovechkin's done this in multiple eras, and he's done it against eras of defense and goaltending, which I think make this even more impressive. Where if you look at Wayne Gretzky's goals in the 80s, where I'm not to be super critical of the goaltending, but it wasn't that good. It was pretty bad if you watch an old film of goaltenders back then trying to make saves. And you look at the goaltending in the 2000s, the 2010s, and goaltending's down now, and offense has taken an uptick. But the fact that he's done it against these goaltenders is all the more impressive when you talk about Brodeur, Henrik Lundqvist, Marc-Andre Fleury. You talk about the names that you throw out there. But I want to hear really quickly your thoughts. I'll start with you, Jacob. What are your quick thoughts, or something that we haven't really heard yet, because everyone's kind of talking about how impressive it is or how we never thought we'd see this? But I want to hear your thoughts on Ovi chasing down the record, and now it's his.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to be a long time until we see that broken again. You mentioned that offense is starting to go up. It's not nearly at the rate that it was in the 80s, and I don't think it's ever going to be back there. Like Austin Matthews, I'm sure he'll hit 700 goals. Sidney Crosby could hit 700. Even even some young guys like Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini, with scoring going up, I wonder if they hit the 650, 700. But I don't think any of them are going to push Wayne Gretzky or Alexander Ovechkin now, I guguess, for that record.
Yeah, I mean, what he could finish with 900, maybe even 900 and change. And well, now it's all about where is he going to end up. And Matthew, I want to hear what your quick thoughts are on this as well before we dive into our big topics, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what he's done. I mean, over his whole career. I mean, even more than Gretzky, how many 30-goal seasons. He's just remarkably consistent with how many how many goals he's scored every season, even in like if you just add up, if there was no lockouts, if there was no COVID shortened seasons, he'd have way more than 900 goals at this point. So I mean, comparatively to where Gretzky did a ton of his scoring at the beginning of his career, Ovechkin's done it his whole career, which is insane to think about. Gretzky was doing like 100 goals a season for a few seasons there. I mean, yes, Ovechkin hasn't done that, but he's just been 30 plus 40 goals every season. Even now, he's over 40 goals, which is amazing. So, I mean, yeah, Ovechkin, and it was perfect that he scored from his office. Too bad it wasn't a one-timer like his usual, but still, from that area of the ice, just remarkable what he's been able to do.
I think the lockouts, which he experienced one because he wasn't around for 2004, but he was there for the 2012-13 lockout and the COVID short season. I think it's interesting you brought that up because a lot of people are quick to point out that Wayne Gretzky played in the WHA and Gordie Howe played in the WHA or WHL. The WHA, that's the one, mixing up my leagues here. But people are saying, oh, they scored a lot of goals there, so Ovechkin didn't, but he scored a lot of goals before coming over when he was playing overseas, and he scored a lot. And you take away those 2 seasons, how many goals does he have there? It's actually interesting. Jacob brought an interesting point up, which is I don't think we'll ever see another one. But that's actually my follow-up question, which is who do you think could, if you could squint, say, if they hit this pace, if they reach that point, who do you think could? I have a few names or a few routes to take on this where if you pick this type of player and say they can score this number of goals, maybe they can reach it. So I'll ask you, Jacob, which player currently can you see maybe getting close to that or possibly breaking Ovechkin's record, considering all things?
Well, I think Austin Matthews is the only answer that's realistic, in my opinion. Like I said, I think he's going to push 700. It's the health for me. Like, obviously, his goals per game is outstanding, one of the best in the league, but I just don't think he's going to be able to stay healthy enough. He's shown over the past 5 years that he can't stay healthy for a full season consistently. But in those 60 to 75 games that he plays every year, he's just unreal. I think he will push the 700 and finish maybe with a higher career goals per game than Ovechkin, but he's not going to finish with more goals.
And the record the record I think for goals per game, Mike Bossy has like that goals per game pace. Yeah. So you could say like he could have that comparable where you're trying to chase that. It is Austin Matthews is the pick that everyone's taking. I think what's interesting is he's like 28, 29. So you could say if he has another 10-year span where he does what he's doing now, you could get to 800. So maybe if he has a few of those big seasons, that's where you could see it. He's one of the names that I also think about. I think everyone's thinking about that. But Matthew, I want to ask you still think, is Austin Matthews the name that you're thinking about, or is there someone else maybe on your mind that really you could start diving down and thinking about?
I'm thinking maybe like Leon Draisaitl. He's put it together quite a few now. He's been a consistent 40, 50 goal scorer for a few seasons. And I mean, his health has been lately his health has been, and that's another thing about Ovechkin. He's been very consistently healthy throughout his career, which is another big thing you have to have. You have to have luck in that area too, not missing a ton of games. And you mentioned Mike Bossy. That's why he didn't, because his career cut short by injury. So you have to have that. But I think Draisaitl, if he stay healthy and continue that, Connor McDavid will be in that conversation too, because they're both scoring quite a few goals. So I would say one of those two, but Austin Matthews definitely, again, health with him too.
There were two avenues I went down with this, which were you have the great players in the NHL right now in their primes. Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon is also up there at in that 390 range. Kyle Connor, was surprised at how low it was. It's like 290 in that 290 range, which I was surprised. I was like, I thought he'd have more, but he started hitting a stride, hitting 50 goal seasons every year, but a bit later. So it wasn't as recent. And I think he came up into the league a little later. But that was where my mind first went. Then the other part is which players don't have that mileage on them, where you could project and say maybe they keep it up to the point where they're at that pace. And you have to look at the younger players in the league. Jack Hughes was one, but he's been hurt. So, and he has that injury history as well. So you second guess him. The two names that I thought about are, you have to go to very recent drafts, which are Matvei Michkov is a rookie who just had a 30-goal season. So you're thinking he's 20 years old. He just had 30. Maybe if he keeps this up, he can keep hitting 30, and then adds up. The other name, which I think I am really intrigued about this, maybe people aren't talking about, is Wyatt Johnston, who's 21 now and has 90 goals already, or he's getting up to 90. He's had 30. He's had like 3 30-goal seasons, basically. Or he has 30-goal season now. He had 20-something in his first season. So he's going to hit that 90 mark. He's 21. So possibly thinking about maybe if he starts hitting that 40-goal per season average, or starts getting a few 50-goal seasons in there, then he has to do it. But what makes it so impressive for Ovechkin is that he stayed healthy. And it really takes you until you're 40 years old, which is a long time. I mean, modern medicine, maybe you can have a player that makes it that far, but it's what makes it so impressive, is the fact that you're thinking of these players. And if Wyatt Johnston is the one to do it, we're all going to be a lot older, and that's a long time from now. I'll just say that. It's like we're projecting 20 years ahead of time.
Well, you got to say one other thing is that when Gretzky broke, or when he retired and set that record, was Ovechkin ever a thought in anyone's mind? He wasn't. So, I mean, it's this player that could break Ovechkin's record may not even be a glint in anyone's eye right now. So, I mean, They're looking at guys like Gavin McKenna coming up. Who knows? He may be the next one. So, I mean, there's just so many other players that we're not even talking about that could end up.
I wanted to put
even
Bedard
then when Gretzky set that record and retired, Ovechkin was 13 years old.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about Gavin McKenna or even Landon DuPont or any, we don't know who this person is yet.
Yeah,
maybe. I mean, it could be. I mean, a part of me wanted to say Connor Bedard, the next great one, but I was just thinking, who are the best goal scorers in the game now? Like pure goal scorers. And then maybe you could think from there, one of the names, Seth Jarvis came to mind. But what's interesting is Seth Jarvis is 23 and has 90. Once you start getting these ages in and the numbers, you start thinking in your head, oh my God, they have an uphill battle. It does not seem likely. That's why you start thinking of rookies or players that haven't even played in the NHL yet. Maybe the league changes where we start getting 50-goal seasons and 60-goal seasons regularly from some players. But it just really makes it so impressive for what Ovechkin did, and props to him. All right, now that's out of the now we've covered that. Let's dive into our big topic, one that season's almost over, so we're gonna do our mini awards show. I know the award finalists will be announced during the playoffs, and then everyone will kind of pick between the three, but we're gonna feel out who our winners are, who our early picks are for these awards. We did our Norris Trophy debate a few weeks ago. Matthew was on that, and we had that was a good conversation we had. And we're going to get into that. But let's start with one that really let's spend 5 seconds on this one, which is the Vezina Trophy race. And I don't know how much time we should spend on this. Does anyone disagree with Connor Hellebuyck as the unanimous award? I don't think so. All right, let's move on, because we'll probably talk about Hellebuyck a little bit more coming up because of how great a season he has. But I think it's just a matter of if he wins it unanimously or not. There are some.
I do think that Logan Thompson deserves a ton of credit.
Yeah,
he's not first place on my ballot or anybody's, but he's a very, very strong second.
There are some names that it's like you could say they're good finalists, as in they're going to be intriguing finalists. But I think it's a matter of whether Hellebuyck wins it unanimously or not. And I think that there was definitely a few goaltenders that have put together great seasons. Logan Thompson, Vasilevsky's bounced back, but yeah, I mean, we could just the Vezina's is going to Hellebuyck, and the question is, how much hardware does Hellebuyck bring home? Now let's get into one which there's actually a lot of debate on, and for this one I find interesting because I don't know what you guys are going to say, and that's the Calder Trophy debate, or the Calder Trophy race. There's 4 big names, I think, that are getting thrown out there by everyone. And it almost seems like a 25 split, or maybe 26, 25, and then 24. But for this, I'll actually start with you, Jacob. who's your odd one out of the big four? I'm going to say the big four. I mean, you probably have someone else on your list, but the big four are Dustin Wolf, goaltender of the Calgary Flames, Macklin Celebrini, superstar forward for the Sharks. You've got Matvei Michkov on the Flyers, another dynamic forward. And then you've got Lane Hudson, defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens. So, and did I say Michkov plays for the Flyers? Well, he does. But anyway, so Jacob, who's your odd one out, and then who your pick is?
It's so tough because I'm going to go with Michkov, but I think like you look at his season and he deserves to be a Calder finalist. But they're, like you said, it's just a big four-headed monster. All four of them deserve it. But Michkov is my odd one out.
And then your winner. It's so hard. It's so hard because what you're picking. There's going to be a finalist. I mean, there's going to be 3 finalists. So one of them is going to be left out, and you're going to say, and there's a good argument that they could have won the award, but that's what we've got to do. But who do you have winning it all? Winning the award.
All season, Dustin Wolf has saved the Flames from being a bottom 5 team. They don't score goals. They don't come back from being down. They don't like the Flames are not a good team, like at all. Dustin Wolf got them so close to the playoffs. They're going to miss it unless a miracle happens and Minnesota falls out, which honestly, with the way they've been playing, wouldn't be a huge surprise. But yeah, the Flames are likely going to miss the playoffs, but they're so close to it only because of Dustin Wolf. However, Lane Hudson has been unbelievable this season. I put out a tweet yesterday and I said to the Senators fans, is your hate for Lane Hudson because he plays for the Montreal Canadiens or because he's exactly what you wanted Eric Brandstrom to be? And that's like that got a ton of traffic. And I think it's a little bit of both. And seeing Lane Hudson thrive under Marty St. Louis makes so much sense. And I don't know, he's so much fun to watch. I really hope he develops his defensive game a bit. I don't think his offense will always be this high. I think it's just like a really hot start. I think he's always going to be in the 60-point range at that's his floor in this league. So if he can really develop that defensive game, even as a smaller player, he's going to be one of the best defensemen in the league.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Lane Hudson is we could start putting him in the Norris conversation really soon. And Dustin Wolf, you could start putting in the Vezina conversation soon, maybe even as early this year, you could say him as a top 5 finisher in the award, but the way he's carried the Calgary Flames. And I think what's interesting with the award is I think this is just a general thing with awards, especially the Calder, is we have to separate who we think is going to have the better career versus who is having the better season or who's having the more important role. And I think Lane Hudson right now, with him having that, the way he's carried the Canadiens this season, not carried them, but the role he's played on that team, I think it's hard to ignore him as really one of the front runners. But I mean, all four have a great argument. You kind of laid it out there for us. But so Matthew, before I dive into mine, I want to hear who your odd one out is first, and then who your winner is for the Calder.
Like Jacob said, it's so tough. I mean, all 4 of these guys can definitely get votes, and it's probably not going to be a runaway with the votes for all these guys. I was going with Michkov coming out of the conversation. I mean, out of the finalist, at least, of those 3. And Lane Hudson's my winner. I mean, he's been just so impressive. I wrote his prospect profile way back when, and I looked back at it just to kind of remind myself what I said his ceiling was going to be. And not to pat myself on the back at all, but I said he was going to be a top 4 defenseman and possibly a number 1. His offensive creativity and skating and all that stuff is just, it's Quinn Hughes-esque when you watch him out there. And not saying he's going to become as dominant as like Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, those types, but he could. Like Jacob said, if he fixed up his defense, and Quinn Hughes, everyone remembers when he was in his draft year, that was one of his knocks, was defense was not good, and he has to fix that. And yes, he is bigger than Hudson, but I think Hudson can develop that defensive game under just developing it, and he will. And just that offense, and I've said before, you can't teach that offense. And Hudson has it, those instincts, that offensive hockey IQ. He's going to be a great defenseman for a long time, 60 plus, maybe even eclipsing that 70, 80 point mark. So I'm going with Hudson winning the Calder. And like possibly some other awards down the line.
Yeah.
So yeah, and can't believe getting drafted beyond the first round is just insane to me.
I love how you mentioned the Quinn Hughes comp, because it's similar where Quinn Hughes, when he started out in the league, where you saw the skill, you saw the talent there, but his defensive play wasn't there, but he worked on that to become one of the top defensemen in the NHL. I think what's funny is I think all three of us have the same winner. I have Lane Hutson too, which is, I think it's not just how impressive he's looked in this first season, the role and how he's looked even defensively. I think he's second on the Canadians in defensive point share. It's not the go-to stat, but it does tell you a little bit about the value he's played on the defensive ends of the ice. I mean, Mike Matheson's still their number one defensive defenseman, but he's right up there. He's the role he's played. They've made him a number one defenseman. They made him a top pair defenseman. Where you look at his ice time, the role he's played, and the big thing is he's putting them in the playoff conversation. Or they're not in the playoffs yet, but they're the leading wild card team, and a lot of it is because of him. They have a lot of young talent there, but the way he impacts the game in every facet of the game, I think that really makes him the winner. My odd one out, and this one was tough, was I think Dustin Wolf oddly is the one that I have to take out, and it's not a knock on him, because he's a great goaltender. I think he'll end up with a better career probably than maybe at least three of these four, where he'll be one of the best goaltenders in the game. I think this season, the big thing would have been for him if he would have willed the Flames into the playoffs, and it would have been like, okay, it's easy to give him the award then. This season, it's just a great season on a team that's been pretty bad. Not pretty bad, really bad. And offensively, they average like 2.5 goals per game. So they're pretty bad. But he's the one out, and it's really more of the fact that you look at what Mitch Cobb and Celebrini are as just game changers and game breakers. I have to put them as my finalists. I've Celebrini too. I think Celebrini might win it just because he's the name brand, kind of similar to it's funny if Celebrini finishes 1 and 2, where with Lane Hutson, it's going to be similar to Brock Faber and Connor Bedard, where it's, do you give it to the name brand generational, the person who's quote unquote the generational talent, or do you give it to the better player, the player who's having a great season that not everyone knows about? And Lane Hutson is that this season, the defenseman who's having that season. So, I mean, yeah, all three of us are. Interestingly, I thought it was going to be more of a split, but all three of us agree on this one. One, you mentioned Quinn Hughes and you mentioned defenseman, I think, and that was the one last week, which was, or 2 weeks ago, we had our great debate. Interestingly, Zach Werenski won the polling. Take that for what it's worth. After we put up a poll, we put it out a few places, and Zach Werenski was the winner of that. But our we have three for that award. We have Quinn Hughes, Zach Werenski, and Cale Makar. I'll turn it over to you, Matthew, because you are on the Quinn Hughes side of things. Do you think if he should win the award, or who do you think wins the Norris Trophy this season? Now that we're a few games away, there's a little bit more clarity, maybe. But the floor is yours.
I'm going with Cale Makar. He's now over 30 goals. Or no, he has 30 goals now. Close to breaking that Mike Green record that from a few seasons ago now. But 31 goals, I believe, was the record. Of the modern era, that is. He's not
thinking the record has to be like Bobby Orr had like 50 or something.
Of the modern era.
Never be. Yeah.
You have Paul Coffey with 47.
Yeah.
Something like crazy.
Of the modern era, I guess. It hasn't been done in a while. The 30 goal mark, and you're looking at Cale Makar's he's really good defensively too. He's putting up the points, and usually the Norris Trophy goes to the guy that gets a ton of points. And Erik Karlsson, that's just a definition of that. He won it over 100 points, not the best defensively, but he still won it. So I'm going to say it's Cale Makar, and he's much better defensively than Karlsson. So I'm going with him. Just Quinn Hughes, his injuries this season, missing 16 games, I think really put him behind, even though he's still over 70 points and he's carried the Canucks. He's their best defenseman, and he's definitely going to be a finalist. But I'm going with Cale Makar winning it.
I think what's interesting, you mentioned the other two finalists, and I think not only Quinn Hughes missing some time, but the fact that both teams doesn't look like they're making the playoffs, and that would have been a good storyline, narrative-based award if you want to add. Say it's a narrative-based award. that they would have willed their teams into the playoffs, and now they're kind of on the outside looking in. Jacob, I'll turn it over to you. You weren't part of that debate. We probably watched a little bit to see if anyone swayed your mind there, but I want to hear who do you have as your winner for the Norris Trophy?
As my winner, it's got to be Cale Makar. It's really close with Zach Werenski. It would be really close if Quinn Hughes was healthy all year, of course. But I really want to give it to Zach Werenski. But it's got to go to Makar. The 30 goals, and he's going to hit 95 plus points. It's ridiculous. I do also want to give some love to Jake Sanderson, who deserves to be in this conversation. I think he's top 5. I don't think that's a homer pick.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that there is a great second tier defense. But then, like, you have your big 3, which are Werenski, Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar. They're going to be the top 3, but you do have a very good second tier of defensemen that are having great seasons. I think it really speaks a lot to how great the position is, not just now, but in the future. Jake Sanderson, this season's really become an elite defenseman, and he'll be a top 4 or 5 in that conversation. Brock Faber's another name to throw out there. These defensemen who are really good, they're just not going to be, they're not in that elite tier. I also want to vote for Zach Werenski, and I actually wrote a piece about how he could win it right after our great debate. And the fans also want, I think, him to win the award. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's Cale Makar. And I think the interesting thing that you talk about the points and you talk about the numbers, defensively, he's also one of the best defensemen in the NHL. And he is one of the truly great defensemen in our era. And he's only won it once. I think this is the year he wins it again. And I think what's interesting, he's great defensively. And I think that so far we've agreed on 2 awards already. This one I'm pretty sure we won't agree on, because this is the version of the award we're going to make it up, which is the every year you hear about the Norris is given to the most skilled defenseman, the best offensive defenseman. We need an award for the best defensive defenseman, the best stay-at-home defenseman, or really a defenseman who's great on the defensive end of the ice. There isn't an award for this, but we're going to call it the Jacob Slavin Award, which is just the best defensive defenseman. And we're just going to throw out some names maybe that these players are having great seasons defensively. And if there was an award for this, we'd give it to them. So I'll start with you, Jacob, on this. Who is your Jacob Slavin Award winner in this award that we're kind of making up on the fly? But we thought of great defensemen, especially on their own ends.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that deserve to be in this conversation, and it's so, like, with the Norris. Whether it should be or not, we look at the points to kind of decide who it should be, and then we look at the defensive play. With this, it's so, like, impossible to measure. Like, yeah, you can go look at models, but they're all different. So this is a very opinion-based one, more than some of the other ones that have concrete evidence. There's a lot of guys, like Matthias Ekholm I would have in there. Esa Lindell. I think Esa Lindell is who I would give it to. But Gustav Forsling is in there. Obviously, Devon Taves, Jacob Slavin, Chris Tanev. Like, there's so many guys that could be in this conversation, and it goes towards what you value more. Like Chris Tanev, he eats pucks for breakfast. Is that what you like? You got Matthias Ekholm, who's just kind of does it all. Devon Taves, who does it really well and chips in offensively. Like, you can go anyway, but I really like the way that Esa Lindell has kind of really solidified that Stars blue line, especially with Miro Heiskanen out. I think Thomas Harley is their best defenseman without Heiskanen, without a doubt, but Lindell really solidifies that whole group. So I'm going to give it to him, especially looking at how good the Stars are defensively, and he's the anchor to that.
This would have been the Miro Heiskanen Award. This would have been his award, actually, if he was healthy for the full season. He also would have been a top 5 five or even top 3 finalist if he stayed healthy. Unfortunately, he wasn't. I actually was thinking about, while you were going through this, it would be great if this was an award, just to see how people back their votes or how people rationalize voting for certain players, because I mean, really mainly because everyone kind of have their own models, their own metrics, or whether it's defensive point shares or goals, whether it's expected goals against or expected goals for, whatever stats, advanced stats there are. But then you maybe have the older voters out there, not older, but more traditional. And it's like, I guess maybe they use plus minus, I don't know, or ice time.
Blocks and hits.
block shots, yeah, and hits. But those are, or really, it's you watch a lot of games and you see, yeah, this defenseman's the best defenseman. Matthew, I'll turn it over to you, which is if you have a few names or one name you're thinking about for the Jacob Slavin Award. Jacob Slavin maybe could win it this year. He's having great seasons defensively as well. But who your vote would be given to if you had one?
Well, we're not giving it to his namesake, right? Jacob Slavin Award. Shouldn't Jacob Slavin win it since he's still in the league? Yeah.
When he retires, I feel they should make the award and start giving it out to people like after.
Give it to a guy that's retired already.
Yeah, I mean, the other awards are named after great owners. So
yeah, Jacob Slavin's one of the definitely in the conversation for sure. You're looking at. I love Chris Tanev. He's been just so good. And I would have actually named it after him before. I've been a proponent of this award for a long time. And, guys like Tanev, guys Slavin, like you said, Lindell, they're never going to be in the Norris conversation. They don't put up points. I mean, but with them on your team, they just make such a huge difference whenever they're out there. When Tanev was on the Canucks, whenever he was hurt, and it was a lot, but whenever he was out of the lineup, the blue line just looked so different. And when he's out of the lineup in Toronto, also the same thing. He just creates so much. He's such an impact player when he's just not some points, put so many blocked shots and all that type of stuff. He's an eraser in his own zone. I want to actually give it to Chris Tanev. For this season too, because he's made a big difference in Toronto on the blue line. And, he's older now, but he's still doing the same things. He's actually staying much healthier, which is funny. Since he left the Canucks, he's actually been a lot healthier too, which would have been great when he was here. Yeah, I'm going to go with Chris Tanev given this one.
Yeah, it is crazy.
For what it's worth, you were talking about the names. I wouldn't name it the Slavin or the Tanev Award. My vote would be the Rod Langway Award.
I was thinking Scott Stevens or Zdeno Chara or like Nicholas Lidstrom back in the day from that era. But yeah, it is interesting, by the way, with Chris Tanev that, he's 34 and he's having another one of his best seasons probably, which is it's crazy to think about. We're kind of throwing out names here, but so I'll limit it to 3, which are ironically, Cale Makar is one of the best defensemen in the NHL defensively. So you could actually give him that award as well, would defeat the purpose. But you talk about his defensive metrics, and one of the things is that he's very good at possession and puck control, which is creating turnovers and then handling the puck out of the offensive zone. So a lot of those stats work in his favor, which are very valuable defensively. But then I'll throw out 2 names. For Gustav Forsling, who's the Panthers' defensive defenseman, who he's kind of taken over that mantle of the Jacob Slavin Award, which is he's the next in line where if there was an award, he'd win it often. But he's one of those names to throw out there. He's also having a very good season in Florida. And another name, Thomas Harley, which I think you mentioned Esa Lindell. Thomas Harley is another defenseman who's having a great season. He's actually their number 1 defenseman now that Miro Heiskanen's out, also offensively, but defensively he's also having a great season. So there's just a few names to throw out there. It would be interesting. I really would be intrigued to see what the award looks like, because how people would vote for it, and maybe there'd be more of a split, especially this first few seasons, because people don't really know what they should be voting for as much as they'd watch the games and call their people to say, oh, what are you seeing here, or what are you seeing there? But it would be interesting. All right, so from there, let's go to another defensive award, but this time for a forward, which we have an award for that. And on a side note, I always find it funny when we try to rename the Selke Trophy, because of all the names that the trophies are named after, they're all named after owners or former governors or former league presidents. The Frank Selke Award, Jay Selke Award, should not be renamed because Selke was one of the best presidents of the NHL, actually made the league pretty much into a league post-World War into that next era. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But we're up to the Selke Award, and I think this season we don't know who it's going to be. We don't have that clear-cut favorite. We don't have a Patrice Bergeron who has won it every year, and we don't. Barkov he has a good case, but is he the best one? I think he's been hurt a little bit. So Matthew, I'll start with you. Who are you voting for in the Selke Trophy?
Well, like Barkov would definitely be in that conversation. I mean, he's probably going to be in it every time just because of how good he is defensively and all around. But I'm going to give it to Sam Reinhart, another Florida Panther. And he's really evolved since being with the Sabres. I mean, he was a very consistent goal scorer there, but defensively, he's just gotten so much better. And he's scoring goals like nobody's business. He's not going to get up to the 57 he did last season. He's at 37 in 76 games. He'd be close to a full season. He's been remarkably durable too. I mean, he's played a lot of 82 game seasons with the Panthers. He's played 2 seasons there. But yeah, he's shorthanded. I'm just looking up how many goals he's got shorthanded this season. I know last season he had quite a few. But yeah, he's just been so consistently good two-way player and probably in that elite category now. And, you're looking at his advanced stats, his Corsi is up there close to 60%. You're looking at his face-offs have been, that may come up against him. He's not as good at face-offs at like Patrice Bergeron. Guys, if that gets into the conversation, he's at 40%. He's rarely around the 50%. He doesn't take as many face-offs as those other guys do. So, I mean, that might work against him in this conversation. But yeah, he's just been really good. He's got 5 shorthanded goals. That's matched the same as last season. So, I mean, and league lead right now. So, I mean, he has got a good case for it. So I'm going to go with Sam Reinhart.
The shorthanded goals definitely work in his favor. I like the face-off conversation is interesting because I feel that kind of puts into the conversation, can the Selke only be given to a center, which is a debate on its own. Maybe they would create another award for that because you have pretty much centers win this award because it's winning face-offs and you feel like you get more bang for your buck defensively from a forward who plays the center position. But yeah, Reinhart, he's really rounded out. You talk about rounding out his game, just becoming this truly elite player in all facets of the game. And they use him in every situation. And it's a reflection of how far he's gone. Now, yeah, I think he's a player to maybe watch for this award with that in mind. Jacob, I'll turn it over to you. Who you have winning it, or maybe you can throw out another honorable mention because you are forecasting because it's hard to know who the front runner is this season.
Yeah, I really like. I mean, my winner is going to be Anze Kopitar. He's had an unreal season this year. Not his best point production season, but that's not what this is about. He's been as good defensively as he ever has. And yeah, he just deserves it. He does everything on the ice. And yeah, so he's my vote. There's not too much to dive into on that. I think everybody can agree that he deserves it. Whether he's number one on their list or not, I don't know, but it's hard to argue against him. But for an honorable mention, I'll throw here's a fun one for you. I'll throw Alexi Protas. I think he's had an unreal season with the Washington Capitals, but again, he's a winger. Yeah, I think that he should be in the Selke conversation as well.
He's one of those players, Protas, and it's interesting. He's one of those great players on a good team that you don't know about. I'll throw Dylan Strome in there as well, which, like, if you're watching this season, you realize, these guys are elite, really good. The funny thing when you mentioned Kopitar on the Kings is I had this discourse a few weeks ago where I thought of teams on the West Coast that I forget exist because just I'm on the East Coast and they're just not. They fly under the radar, and the Kings, for some reason, are the best non-existent team. As someone who's watching I watch a lot of hockey, and I still do not know much about the Kings. And Kopitar is having a great season, but I'm all right, I guess. I think maybe it's because the Kings, I always think I can't take them as seriously until they beat the Oilers, and so until they do that, I'm just gonna keep thinking of the Kings as oh yeah, you're good, but whatever. Until you beat the Oilers, I'm not gonna change my opinion on you, but. Yeah, Kopitar is one of those players that's he's having a great season, and I think also in the Kings they have a few players that are having great seasons. I don't know. I don't stay up as late to watch them. I'll watch a lot of the late games, but not as much. But Kings are one of those teams that fly under the radar. I'll throw 2 names out there. Actually, we'll throw out a team in the Western Conference on the West Coast, or not really West Coast, but in the Pacific Division. One name that was my honorable mention is Jack Eichel, which I think Jack Eichel is one of those players that falls into that category of very good. We don't talk a lot about him until we watch him in the playoffs or watch him on a big stage. And then we're like, oh no, he's a great two-way center. And this season, he's really good defensively, just very good overall as a playing defensively. And also he's great. He's still great leading that top line. And there's a reason Vegas is still the best team in the Pacific Division. He's one of those players, just overall a great player. And he's defensively why he should win the award potentially. But I'll actually give it to you're looking for a narrative to add in as well. I think Nico Hischier is gonna win it this year. I think he might actually win the award, considering Jack Hughes goes down. The Devils are kind of stumbling into the playoff picture, but they've picked it up recently, or they've stayed in that 3 spot. A lot of that has to do with, obviously, Jesper Bratt's doing well, and they have some young players stepping up, and their defense is playing at a high level. But Nico Hischier has really he's become the star of that team. He's taken over as he's the captain, so he's already been the leader, but he's taken over, and he's the reason he's not the reason, but he's one of the key players on that team, really willing them to the 3 seed, and they've picked up the pace, and they started winning a few games, and it wouldn't shock. I mean, it actually would shock us. So it would be a shock if they upset the Hurricanes in the first round, but they're a team built to give them problems. And Nico Hischier as a two-way player is one of the reasons why. So I think he's actually a name that I would throw out there to say maybe he can win the award. If you want to put money down on, he probably is a betting favorite. I haven't checked the lines. I probably should have done that before we recorded, but well, it's too late now. So let's shift from the players actually to behind the bench. We have a award behind the bench, and we have an award in the front office. But the Jack Adams Award, given to the best coach of the year. I actually, when I started thinking of this, I was like, oh, there's like a 2-3 coach race. I started branching out because I think there's a lot of names that you could throw out there, and a lot of people are gonna be not be finalists who have a good argument to be finalists. So there's a lot of honorable mentions as well. But I'm intrigued all of a sudden because I don't know if there's a clear-cut favorite for it, but there's a few names that are like, yeah, they're gonna win the award. I think generally the theme is that great coaches who are great year in year out don't win it, which is like a little bit of a problem, just how we vote. Like John Cooper, every season the Lightning are great, and he never wins it. Rod Brind'Amour, like he's won it once, but the Hurricanes are still always the same great team. But Jacob, I'll turn it over to you. It's who is that Jack Adams Award winner? Because I think it's a tight race, and also a lot of unknown with this.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, a lot of honorable mentions. I'll throw out a few names. I think Jim Montgomery deserves some credit in St. Louis. Travis Green in Ottawa for sure. But it's really just a 2-horse race, in my opinion. It's Scott Arniel with Winnipeg and Spencer Carberry in Washington. But I don't even think it's a 2-horse race. I think it's Carberry's to lose. Just looking season over season, the way he's developed this Washington team into what they are now, like Winnipeg, is relatively the same team as last year. Very, very good. A lot of good things about it, but Washington completely turned everything around. Carberry's brought in like this new style of coaching where it's kind of offense first. Usually teams are committed to defense first, but the way that Carberry coaches, the way that he gets his team rolling, he's going to be one of the best coaches in hockey for the next 40 years.
Yeah, he's going to be a great coach for a while, which I think was like talked about the hire. It's like a hire that's made to last, where he was a first-year head coach last season, and he got the best out of a roster that wasn't that good. And now this season, they're the best team in the Metropolitan Division. And I think what's interesting is maybe something will be, you talked about Scott Arniel being the second vote. I think something that will be held against him is they'll say, well, you have the same roster. The roster was good last season, and you have Hellebuck, who's going to win the Vezina. So you have to hold that against him possibly. It's interesting because I'll dive into mine as well, the honorable mentions. But Matthew, I wonder where you lean on this, because Carberry's having a great season. I have a different reason maybe to not hold against Carberry, but maybe something to say like he would get the votes for this award. But I'll turn it over to you. Who do you think wins the Jack Adams Award?
Just a note on Arnell. You're looking at when Alain Vigneault won the Jack Adams, Roberto Luongo was the best goalie in the NHL. So and he won the Jack Adams. But yeah, I think it's Carberry's to lose as well. I just think such a turnaround from last season. Yeah, maybe boosted by the fact that everyone wanted Ovechkin to break the record, and they made the team better so that he could. I mean, that was a big part of it. But again, that's pieces and roster, changeover, and a coach putting them and making them a really good team with a good mix of veterans and young guys. And he's been able to get the best out of everyone. I mentioned Protas earlier. I mean, he's now developed into a top line guy and over 30 goals this season. So it's not just Ovechkin carrying this team. There's a lot of other guys that Carberry's been able to have and get into a team relatively quickly. Like you said, lots of turnover, Dubois coming in. They changed a lot of their roster from last season to this season, brought some young guys. The blue line's different. Jacob Chikrin coming in as a top guy there and really has turned into what Ottawa was hoping he was going to be. So, I mean, it's a really good team, and it's a reason why Carberry's it's not just the team. He's been a reason for why they are so good. So I'm going to go with him. Honorable mention, I think Dean Evison deserves a big shout out. I mean, they probably won't make the playoffs. They're still in the conversation, but seems to be kind of dropping off. But, in a season that was very hard to start, we all know with a very somber beginning to the season that could have, had, I don't know, I'm saying this is an excuse, but it could have been an excuse to have a bad season. But he really brought them together and made a really good team that was in the playoff conversation and actually in the playoffs for quite a few weeks. So, and I don't think anyone expected that, especially with a lot of the injuries that were happening. They had a lot of their top, Sean Monahan was out for a while, the top center. And Werenski's really, of course, helped that too. But I'm going to say Dean Evison really deserves some votes in it too. Dean
Evison as an honorable mention. He was also one of my honorable mentions. I do find it interesting you mentioned Dean Evison, and we did mention Zach Werenski. There is this, I don't know what you want to call an idea, but just a tendency in voting that we kind of parlay a few awards where a team is great, coach of the year, and then a player who wins that award on that team. It kind of, we group them together a little bit sometimes. So I think with the Blue Jackets, if they would have made the playoffs, it would have been Evison wins the Jack Adams, and then Werenski is the Norris winner, but they're still on the outside looking in, so it seems like it's not likely, but he's done a great job, and still we shouldn't take that away from and Zach Werenski, but Evison, we shouldn't take away the fact that he's done a great job with this team, and it really talks about a bright future. And one of the honorable mentions that, I mean, he falls into the category of the John Cooper tier or the Rod Brind'Amour tier, but I would give him an honorable mention. He's one of the names that we didn't mention is Jared Bednar. And I think it's, and we overlook him because he's one of the longer tenured head coaches, and the Avalanche are always good, but I don't think we give him enough credit for the fact that they overhauled the entire roster this season, where you talk about mid-season, not just before the season, off season. Oh yeah, they traded a few players in the off season and they signed a bunch of players. They, once the season began, traded both their goaltenders and replaced them. And you talk about the Mikko Rantanen trade, which a blockbuster at its time, and it still is the big trade that happened this season. That happens. They overhaul. They just move out a bunch of players. They become a top-heavy team to a team that has a bunch of depth, and you can credit the front office for doing that. But the fact that he was able to just kind of handle all those moving parts, almost similar to the way an AHL team operates, where players are out, players are in on the fly, and you have to quickly piece it all together. He did that, so that he won't get votes, but he should be in that conversation. But he won't be. I mean, he's in that Rod Brind'Amour and John Cooper tier. I have Spencer Carberry as my number 2 vote. I think, Scott Arniel for me, it's just hard. especially if they win the President's Trophy, it's hard to say that he's not. I mean, they went from good to great, but I would have to give it to him just because of what. And you're talking about replacing Rick Bowness. Everyone's like, oh, how is this going to work out? And they hired from within. And whenever those hires happen, you always question how is it going to work. You're going from assistant coach to head coach, which is good cop to bad cop, and that's always a question of how it's going to work. And not only has he done a good job, he's done a great job with the Jets. He's had the similar roster and taken it up a notch, which I think is interesting, which I think helps his cause. So I will give it to him. It's although Carber has a great argument, and I think it could go to either one. And I think what's interesting with both teams, you look at the GM and you can maybe say, oh, they should be the GM of the year, the Jim Gregory Award, which is the GM of the year. I think that might be the case for Kevin Cheveldayoff, saying like, oh, he's done great. And I think one of the issues with this award is that we kind of give it to we give it to someone who has a great offseason, but it's almost a lifetime achievement award where some GMs, it's like they've done great for years and we don't give it to them. And we should. Like Kevin Cheveldayoff, like with all the obstacles that Winnipeg has, whether like they're known as the team that's not a destination, where the players do not want to go there, where it's on their no trade clause. They say, don't send me to Winnipeg. A lot of players don't like signing there. There are players that love playing there because it's a great market and it is a great place to play for. So it depends on who you are, but he has that obstacle in front of him, and he's done a great job there. So maybe he should win it as a lifetime achievement award, but we don't tend to give it out that way. But I'll actually start with you, Matthew, on who your Jim Gregory Award winner is, whether it's from this offseason or just in general, how they've handled even this season or the trade deadline. Who you give it to?
Well, we mentioned all the big turnover that the Colorado Avalanche came. I'm going with Chris McFarland. He's just, you mentioned those two goalies. Those two goalies didn't start the season with them. Alex Georgiev had a horrible start, and they were just bleeding points because they just didn't have the goaltending. And then they traded both. They don't have the same two goalies, and they got two new goaltenders, and they're both really good.
They got Wedgwood and Blackwood, if you want.
Yeah, Wedgwood and Blackwood. And we talk about the Vezina Trophy. I don't know if Blackwood would be in that conversation anymore, but he was, I think, for a while there. And that was a new guy coming in from the San Jose Sharks and, on a team that was horrible, that he comes to Colorado. So like, whoa, I've got a good defense in front of me now. And he's started looking like the guy that was in New Jersey, looked like was going to be the goaltender of the future for them. And then dealt with injuries and all that stuff. But, changing both your goalies early in the season and being good, it's pretty crazy. And then you look at, the Rantanen trade. They got Martin Necas, who's looked great for the Avalanche. Doesn't look like they've missed a beat. He's been one of their top players since he came. And then they go and get so much depth at the deadline. Your Brock Nelson looks like he's fitting in. Charlie Coyle, maybe not putting up a lot of points, but he increases the center depth. Talking about, Nazem Kadri being a guy that they're trying to replace over time here. I mean, Brock Nelson may leave in the offseason, but he's really fit in as potentially that second line center. Their defense, of course, led by Kale McCarr, still one of the top defenses. But just the changeover at goaltender is just insane. And bringing in two guys that have fit in really well. The team's back to being a Stanley Cup contender. And I don't know if you could have said that early in the season.
Yeah, before the season this is a top-heavy team that they're good, but they don't have the depth and they're not good enough to beat a team like the Stars or a team like the Jets. And now they are. And it's interesting because you always hear you can't trade for a goaltender in the middle of the season. Those very rarely work out. It's hard to acclimate. Turns out you can, and you can twice. And it's going to be interesting to see how front offices react or follow suit. Maybe other teams start trying to make moves early on in the season if they realize their goaltending is not working. It is a bold move to do. It's even talk about another bold move, trading Mikko Rantanen. You trade a superstar. Very rarely you trade a player with that elite with that level of talent. And very rarely do you win the deal when you trade the best player, which in their case, they did win the deal. I mean, if he was able to sign the extension in Carolina, maybe we'd be talking about it's a win-win trade. But you got Natchez, you got Jack Drury. It was a great move overall. And yeah, you talk about adding depth, the Brock Nelson trade, all these trades he's made. It's the ability to not only keep pushing and winning when you have Makar and McKinnon in their primes, and you need to keep winning with those two on your roster, but doing it not at the cost of, destroying your roster either, destroying your team either. They're still a great team, and now they're even a better team. So, I mean, I would put him in that. I would put him in the conversation. I actually was thinking you guys are also going to mention Jake. I'm sure you're going to mention him as well, but so I didn't mention him as my winner, but he's definitely up there as a finalist for this award. So Jacob, I will ask you if maybe you also had McFarland as your winner, but just in case you didn't, who else maybe you have in there? You could even mention him as an honorable mention because the Avalanche as a whole, they've done a great job not overhauling, but yeah, pretty much overhauling the roster. So who's your pick?
Yeah, I mean, Chris McFarland is the winner for sure. I assume you're getting at Steve Stamkos and how good of a job he's done with the Senators. Bringing in Linus Ullmark, who has been unreal. Nick Jensen has been a fantastic addition. He's just done a great job. David Perron didn't start off great this year, but he had some personal matters to take care of. He's been fantastically, so much of what Ottawa has done over the past 16 months or so has been fantastic, and that's all led by Steve Stamkos. But he's not even my honorable mention. I'm going to go with the other side of the Rantanen trade, and I'm going to go with Eric Tulsky.
Ooh.
He was dealt a not great hand. He did what Don Waddell couldn't do over the last few years. He made a gigantic addition, and it just didn't work out. Sometimes that happens. He ended up winning the trade because I think that getting Logan Stankoven, 2 first-round picks and 2 third-round picks is more valuable than Drury, Necas, and a second and a fourth. I think Eric Tulsky did a phenomenal job there. And then bringing in Mark Jankowski as well, who I believe has outscored Rantanen since the deadline. Jankowski has been ridiculous. Now, that's not going to stick forever. But bringing in Taylor Hall as well, fantastic move. He got Taylor Hall for, what was it, a 4th-round pick or something?
It was part of the
Mikko Rantanen deal.
Yeah, so it's got mixed in with that. So it's hard to know exactly who was going where, but there's a lot of moving parts. But he got Taylor Hall, which he's also been playing well.
Yeah. So I think, and then you look at the offseason that he had too, bringing in a few defensemen, bringing Shane Gostisbehere back was a brilliant move. Bringing Carrier in is working out pretty well. So I think Eric Tulsky deserves to be in the conversation too.
It's so interesting. Go ahead.
Jankowski is the most underrated move at the deadline. That was flew way under the radar. I was like, oh, Jankowski getting traded. Okay. But he's been a really good fit there. How many goals does he have? He's approaching
he has 7 goals in 13 games.
7. Yeah.
He doesn't have an assist yet though.
I think he's probably one of the more underrated moves at the deadline that just really fit. And
even with guys like Jankowski,
no news really was on that trade.
Yeah.
Even with guys like Jankowski, you get sent to a team like the Nashville Predators, you end up being a 4th liner there, and you just play your role. You do your job. People forget that everybody drafted to the NHL has so much talent. Even a 7th round pick has a ridiculous amount of talent. And would dust any of us on the ODR. But Jankowski was selected 21st overall in 2011, I want to say. I could be a year or two off there, but he showed a ton of promise. He lit it up in his junior league, and it's a surprise, but it's also this guy's been in the NHL for 10 years. You know how things work. He was a role player. He did his job. Now he's being told to play with a little bit of freedom, and he's doing that. So,
yeah, it's also interesting you talk about these players. Is a lot of them, the talent's there. I mean, you're getting drafted, but it's all about adjusting and finding a role as you develop. But these teams, that's what makes building a Stanley Cup contender or building in hockey so interesting, is you can't just draft your way to the top. And I've said this multiple times, but when you're developing a player, finding out how to get the most out of them or finding a role for them on your roster and saying, okay, we need you to now be a fourth line. We need you to develop into a fourth liner. And it's like, well, if you're a skilled player coming in out of the junior level, you're not a forechecker or you don't learn how to play defense, but they learn quickly. They learn, especially once they move up levels, especially when you move into whether it's the collegiate level or the Canadian Hockey League levels or the AHL. They learn quickly that you have to play, you have to develop, and you have to add certain skill sets to your game. You have to become a complete player. So yeah, Jankowski. Yeah, what's interesting with Tulsky is I don't know if I would put him in their conversation. I feel like there's a little bit of this like less hindsight bias of saying, oh, maybe this wouldn't have worked out, or maybe this wouldn't, or maybe what's the name with Natchez? Like, I think keeping Natchez would have been better off just because of how good Natchez was. I think he's still number 2 on their team in points, which is crazy. If you look at overall the Hurricane stats, he's number 2 on their team or number 3, and he has only played like 50 games with them or something like that, or 40.
Personally, I think, like, I agree with Jacob that they actually won the trade completely at the end now, because you're looking at guys. I think getting Logan Stankoven, which is probably the biggest part of that trade now, is a much better fit for the Carolina Hurricanes than Mikko Rantanen. So, I mean, I think he just fits that system, and it looks like, I mean, he's producing, and he's got a ton more upside in his game too. So yeah.
I think it's easier to talk yourself into Stankoven now because he's younger and he has that upside. So it's like maybe he becomes that next great player. I will say he's definitely covered up for the fact that he made this big deal and he gave up a lot to get Mikko Rantanen. And right away he realized it wasn't working out. Or right away they knew, okay, we have to make up for this. We have to save ourselves. Whether you do that in general, I mean, you make that type of move because your goal is to win a cup, and you do whatever you can to do that. But then for him to cover up, and the fact that he did get a lot in return, so I'll give him credit. I don't know though if that gets him the award. We're definitely going off on a lot of tangents here. So I'll list a few of the names. I mean, I had McFarland on my list as well, but I'm not going to give it to him. I actually will give it to, I don't know who we can technically give it to, whether it's Chris Patrick or Brian McClellan, but this is the reason I didn't vote for Carberry as my Jack Adams Award winner, because the Washington Capitals, you look at their offseason, they just went on a heater where everything worked out. And I know Dylan Strom's not this offseason, but he was recently where he was brought in. But you look at some of the moves they made. You get Jacob Chikrin, you get Pierre-Luc Dubois, you get Logan Thompson. That's 3 right there. And all three not only have worked out, they've all been great deals. You talk about those moves where you just get on a run like that. I think that alone, I mean, that obviously Carberry's gotten the most out of this group that he now has, but I think the fact that they just went on a heater and they just rattled off a bunch of these great moves. I think Matt Roy also was an addition that was this offseason, and that's also worked out. He's one of the more depth defensemen. He's not a scorer like Jacob Chikrin is, but you look at all those moves that have all worked out, and it's like, yeah, that's why I would give him that award, and maybe Carberry finishes second in the Jack Adams, but it is interesting because I think there's a few names to maybe throw out there with all this in mind, but they're getting my vote. I mean, I think they'll get a few votes, so it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. All right, I guess we're saving best for last. I think that's how we lead up to. I don't know how award shows, if they work that way. I haven't watched an award show in a while, and I don't know if the NHL is doing one, but it doesn't really matter. That's neither here nor there. But best for last, the biggest award of them all, the Hart Trophy winner, MVP of the league, best player in the league, most valuable, whatever word we're going to use, but we're just going to say the Hart Trophy. Let's start with you, Jacob. Who's your Hart Trophy winner? And I think this is interesting because there's a lot of routes to go also with this one. And it depends on what your opinion is on whether reaching a certain milestone in goals scored or value, whatever it is. But I'll turn it over to you. Who is your Hart Trophy winner?
Yeah, so it's most valuable player to their team. And there's one player that if you pluck him away from his team, they sink. And I guess you could say that about a few players this season. But like you look at Leon Draisaitl, I think they're fine without him. You look at Nikita Kucherov, maybe a wild card team without him. You look at Nathan McKinnon, they're more than fine without McKinnon. Obviously, those three players are three of the top five in the league and make for huge improvements on their team. But the teams are really good around them too. It's Connor Hellebuck. Nobody can do what Connor Hellebuck is doing. Obviously, he's leading the league in every metric by goaltenders. He has the Winnipeg Jets second in the league, and like he's a cheat code right now. I don't think there's any doubt that he is the most valuable player to his team in the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, the value he brings to we haven't seen a goaltender win in a while, and I knew we were going to circle back because we didn't spend a lot of time on the Vezina conversation talking about how good Hellebuck has been, but for him to win the Hart Trophy, his value he brings to the Jets, and not only is he a great goaltender, but he's way ahead of everyone else and the value he brings. Matthew, I'm wondering if you also have Hellebuck as your winner, or maybe have another name that you're throwing out there, but it is I am intrigued. Who do you have winning the Hart Trophy?
Echoing what Jacob said with all those other guys. I mean, you take them off the teams, they're probably still fine. Obviously not as good. The Oilers without Draisaitl and McDavid, you're seeing what they are right now. I mean, they're winning games, but they're not the same team. But yeah, these teams are still going to be good. They may not be great without these guys on the team. But you take Hellebuck off the Jets, they're not winning as many games, and that's just the bottom line of it. You put Eric Comrie in there all season. I'm sorry, no disrespect to him. He's a good goalie. He is not a superstar like Connor Hellebuck is. You look at all those numbers that he's got; it's just ridiculous. In the modern, I mean. Looking at Igor Shesterkin that season he had where it was under 2, I think he finished the season with. He's close to that with Hellebuck. He's what, 2.04 goals against average. He allows 2 goals a game. I mean, that's just insane. I mean, that's just how 924 save percentage. I mean,
if the Jets go up 2-0, it's like the game feels officially out of reach.
Yeah. It's like your goalie has to be as good as him. I mean,
yeah,
and that's allowing 1 goal maybe.
It is crazy, yeah. It does feel that way, and I think what's more interesting. You talk about where would they be without him. It's not just that they're a good team; they're the best team in the NHL, or second best team in the NHL, and with him there, and it's really him leading the way, because how many star players are on the Winnipeg Jets? Kyle Connor's very good. Nikolai Ehlers is a great. Gabe Vilardi is a great player. These are great players, but how many superstar players, which other teams have? They don't have that. They don't have that superstar player. I mean, Kyle Connor's really good, but is he in the same tier as some of these elite players? They're being carried by Connor Hellebuck, who's not just a good goaltender, but a great goaltender. And we started this off by agreeing on who the Vezina winner would be, and we started off by agreeing on the Calder Trophy Award, and we're all in agreement. I think to add to this, which I think I'll throw in a little bit more of a narrative part of this, is one of the questions I've always asked myself when it comes to the Hart Trophy or some of these awards is, what will you remember from the season, or what will you take away from the season? And one of the things that I'm taking away is that goaltending is not that good, or a lot of teams are struggling to find even baseline goaltending, which is you look at some teams and you say, if Detroit had good enough goaltending, just baseline goaltending, to be a playoff team. And you could say that about a lot of teams where if they just had good enough goaltending, they'd be good. But goaltending around the league is down. And the league where goaltending has struggled, there are very few elite goaltenders in the league right now. Hellebuck's not just great. He's running laps around the field. He's just that much better than everyone, not just any goaltender, but that much more valuable to his team. And I think in a season where goaltending is down, he's having one of the truly special seasons. And yeah, I think it's his award. I would vote for him as well. Like it's his award, and it speaks to how great a season he's had.
I'll throw out an honorable mention to Quinn Hughes for the Canucks. I mean, he would probably be in this conversation again. His health, and if the Canucks would have made the playoffs, with what they've done for the rest of their team, it's just he's got 23 more points, and he leads the Canucks in scoring. It's 23 more points than the next guy. So I think you take him off the Canucks all season, I'm sorry, they're where the San Jose Sharks are.
Hughes and Werenski had the same sort of thing where it was if we take them off their team, the team falls apart. The problem, I think the problem is that just like at this point in the season where both teams are starting to decline, you almost don't keep them in conversation. I think Draisaitl is an intriguing name, but what's really interesting is that I think a lot of people are saying because he scores a lot of goals. And we had this conversation a few years ago with Austin Matthews. What did he hit 60 goals in a season? Igor Shesterkin came in second because Austin Matthews scored 60 goals. And I think Hellebuyck's season is even greater, where it's like how good a season he's having. If the Winnipeg Jets had a good goaltender in net, they might be a borderline playoff team. Like say you swap out him for I would say Jake Ottinger, but Ottinger is also having a great season, an elite season, but you swap him out for whether it's Sorokin or you say Saros is a great goaltender with no help. So you swap out these goaltenders, and where are the Jets? And I don't know if they're a playoff team. They're probably not. They're probably on the outside looking in. That's how good a season Hellebuyck has had. And I think it speaks volumes to just like, well, yeah, I would think he has to be the favorite to win the Hart because of that.
I'll give, just before we move on, or I guess end the show.
Yeah, right.
I'll give an honorable. We'll throw it back to the Vezina Trophy for a sec. Just give an honorable mention to Darcy Kemper. I mean, he actually has a better goals against average than Hellebuyck, so by just a margin, 2.03. But I mean, he's had a great season. The Kings are a great defensive team, so I mean that kind of helps him out. But he's one of the top goaltenders in the league right now too. So just give an honorable mention out to him. We didn't mention him in the Vezina.
We mentioned him, or we mentioned Logan Thompson. We didn't mention some of the other great goaltenders, but yeah, and it's funny that I kind of said we kind of parlay when we vote for awards. We kind of parlay them together, where great coach, great player, and then I ended up doing that with Scott Arniel and Connor Hellebuyck. But regardless, Hellebuyck's going to take home a lot of hardware, and I think now for him, it's all about not looking ahead. It's all about proving that you can beat the Dallas Stars, who are a better 5-on-5 team or a better overall team than the Jets, but you're the better goaltender. Can you lead your team on a cup run? I think that's really the one last thing for him. All right. I guess that's all we got. We're actually on for a lot longer this time. So thank you both for bearing with me and powering through this one. This is a fun one. We got covered pretty much all the awards and one made up awards. So if that, hopefully they make a Jacob Slavin award, or maybe they name it after some other owner. Doesn't matter. But we that's all we got. If you like this episode, first of all, give us a like and comment on YouTube, and also give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts if you like this episode. And if you don't, well, then frankly, I don't know how you made it this far. That's my new line, I guess. I don't know, but make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share this episode. Also, if you like this episode, check out our Home Ice Edition episodes where we dive into some of the teams around the NHL. Those are exclusively on the Substack, where you could find that. You could find those episodes. You could also find great content that is exclusively on the Substack there. You could also make sure to check out Jacob's work and Matthew's work and my work at the Hockey Writers. We're heading towards the playoffs, and while 2 of us are covering teams that are probably not making it to the playoffs, we're definitely going to be putting out a lot of content related to the playoffs and related to all the action. There's also going to be a ton of prospect action, articles coming out because the draft is around the corner. It's one of those times of year where you're getting ready for that sprint towards the finish line. we're not there yet, but we're getting ready for it. And it's really, this is the exciting time of year, at least in my opinion, the exciting time of year once you get into the playoffs and go full speed ahead. And we'll be back with some great playoff stuff. But until then, make sure to tune in next time for another great episode. Thank you.